Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Vox Podcast post-insurrection edition. We are here, and we are grateful to be a small part of your life, or Paul of your life. Either way,
that was a spoiler.
Seriously, we've got Gombis today, and we're asking Gombis to reflect a bit on how we should be processing the 6th of January in theological terms, how we should talk about Christian leaders, how we should talk about and what should we be involved in terms of Christian communities. So it's a lot of very practical stuff with one of our favorite Pauline scholars ever. And as always, we're so grateful that he's just willing to talk out loud with us. We're just batting stuff around like we would in a barbecue or something.
Remember that show Herman's Head?
Nope.
I remember that. It was like an MTV era TV show, and the whole thing was a cast of people that lived inside this guy's head, Herman.
Whoa.
And so Herman would be like having interactions in real life, but then we would go into his head and we would hear all the people that live in his head. That's kind of what I feel like sometimes during these conversations. Like we're all just parked in Gombis' head, and he's just like, things are going off.
Yeah, his neurons were firing. And so anyway, we're excited about that. Before we dive in, we are going to get back to the Sermon on the Mount, but we just wanted to spend some more time on this. We're coming up on the inauguration day and hearing about further threats, and it's just there's nothing in our collective imaginations that would have produced a virus that's dominated life in America for a year in the world. And then this particular election cycle. We knew it was going to be crazy, but wow. And so before we dive in, we just want to do a couple of housekeeping items. And we always do these up front because we really are. These are people who are responsible for the ongoing nature of the podcast. We have this whole, we have a board that oversees this. We have our friend Brenda and her team that are helping us with renaming and rebranding stuff. We have Tim working all of the editorial production magic. We have friends of the podcast like Bonnie and Gombis and others who have just been wise voices, both on air and off. To us over many, many different areas of conversation. So we have a lot of help, and we have a community of people. No shock there, but we have a community of people who financially support the podcast. And I missed reading out the names, so I have 2 weeks of names. And again, we're never going to do ads, or we're not, this is not an exercise in trying to take over Joe Rogan's seat in, podcast heavyweights.
Or is it?
But it's just super encouraging when people see a lot of value in this and come on and help. And so I want to say thank you to Emily and Lucas and Katie and Daniel and Alex and Dawn and Steve and Rick and Sarah and Brian and Richard. And I don't know how to pronounce this name. Forgive me. It's spelled Hakjoon. Hajun. No idea. I'm a Midwestern white guy and was never taught to pronounce names more complicated than Christopher. So, I just want to say thank you to all of those people who have come on board. And if you're interested in doing that, you can go to patreon.com, type in Vox Podcast with Mike Erie, and you can find out more information there. Also go to voxpodcast.com, rate, subscribe if you would. All of that keeps our algorithms happy. Because, after watching The Matrix with my son Nate this weekend, it's all about the algorithms, my friends. We have met our algorithmic overlords, and they are fans of reviews. So there you go.
Every time I have deja vu, I always think about the glitch. Am I glitching?
It's when the agents are coming, man. If you've not seen The Matrix, what is it, 99, 97?
99-ish, probably somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Man, when the guy willingly goes in there and has that bite of steak, it's like the tastiest looking thing.
Oh yeah. But
I mean,
spoiler,
that's probably the highlight of the whole film.
Spoiler,
he's a carnivore.
And
one of the characters.
And one of your friends literally, the ending of the movie is so like salvific that one of your friends released it up and yelled, "And now I want to tell you about Jesus Christ" at the end of it.
Yeah. Yep.
Do you know how much
anybody
money
taking him up on that?
Do you remember how much money was made on books that came out saying,
"Oh yeah,
the
Christian market is of really, really well-oiled machine."
Yeah, within 6 months.
It cranks out stuff so quick. Oh, yeah.
The Christian themes in the Matrix was a thing.
The gospel according to Neo.
I have no idea why I brought that up, except to say, algorithms. So thank you.
Algorithms.
Yep, so
Gotta
thank
feed
you.
the algorithm.
And speaking of algorithms, here is Dr. Timothy Gombis. Ladies and gentlemen, my daughter is trying to catch our dog right now, and it's hijinks over here at the Erie household. We are joined today by a man. There aren't many people who are famous enough to just get a one-word name, right? You got Oprah, you got Prince, you've got
Maradona.
That'll date you, but yes,
also
absolutely.
Madonna.
Yep, also Madonna. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have Gombis in the house. Dr. Timothy Gombis, professor, Grand Rapids Theological Seminary. Welcome, my friend. We are recording this. I don't know what week it is in January. Frankly, it feels like a year has gone by in the first 2 weeks.
It's week 32 of January.
Seriously, man.
I know you've been outspoken on your own podcast, which we highly recommend, by the way, Faith Improvised, about your thoughts of the political situation going on these days. But I was wondering if we could get into a bit today about how Paul, we want you to channel your inner apostle Paul, about how we ought to conceive of some of the things that we're watching. When is anger an appropriate response? When is a call for unity inappropriate? When do Paul's words on quarreling need to be reinforced? I mean, there's just so many really difficult issues to kind of unpack these days. First of all, take us through a little bit about how you thought about what happened a couple of weeks ago on the 6th. What kind of was going through your mind when you were watching that, and then in the days after?
Let's see here. I try to seeing kind of crazy things like that go on. I try to think about them from a variety of perspectives and try to think about, obviously it was shocking. It was really astonishing to see it happening. At the same time, it was astonishing to see, mobs, rampaging through the nation's capital, and also like just a bunch of complete, just bizarre kind of people just sort of milling about. Like people, there was like no purpose. They were just kind of wandering around. That's just astonishing. Yeah, and especially, if you've been to the nation's capital, you know how much security is just all over the place. At the same time, what I've tried to challenge myself with thinking about, especially over the last couple of years, is thinking about the condition of the church, thinking about our nation and its history, and thinking about reality constantly. I'm trying to step inside of other people's shoes here. I'm trying to look at our country and its history and our current situation from the perspective of Black people, because they've never. I mean, going back a number of years, I've tried to winnow down and identify and eliminate from my thinking all the narratives about our country that are false. You guys and I grew up with like positive visions of America. America's, American exceptionalism. America is the world's answer. We're a city on a hill. We're the cop, the policeman of the world, and that's a good thing. The world should be thanking us and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we got some flaws, but overall, we're kind of the height of history. Well, to be a genuine kingdom of God inhabitant means identifying all of those false narratives and ridding them of my thinking. And so I've tried to imagine life from a marginalized person's perspective, try to think about our nation from the perspective of people who have had violence done to them routinely and systematically over the last 400 years. And trying to get rid of illusions. And I honestly, this January 6th, watching those events unfold, I just thought, of course, like, this is us. This is not the moment of outrage. The moment of outrage was when I'll just speak very frank. Well, when the clownish figure came down the escalator and gave a speech demonizing Mexicans as rapists, that was the moment of outrage. And if we were not outraged at that moment, and if we did not see all this coming, then then we're in a pitiful state, and we're not prepared to reckon with January 6th at all. Because that was the moment when a political figure directed the collective rage and anger and suspicion and resentment toward foreigners. And as soon as you have like an us against them scenario, and as soon as you channel all that resentment toward an other and sort of stir up xenophobia, it's inevitable that a moment like January 6th takes place. So, and then even going back before that, to not understand the white supremacists' underpinnings of our culture, to not understand the racialized character of this nation and its racialized stratification of whiteness and white people over Black people and brown people. To not grapple with all that is to not understand that that this was coming. And then just the incendiary rhetoric of the whole campaign in 2015, 2016 of demonizing Black people, demonizing foreigners, demonizing Muslims, all of that channeled all this rage. I mean, you could see it at the president's, well, I mean, he was a candidate at the time, but all those rallies crying for violence against people that were there just observing, generating violent and abusive behavior toward the press. People were there at rallies throwing stuff at just people covering it, throwing batteries, throwing a lot of other stuff. This growing resentment and the channeling of white rage and resentment, it has this outcome, and it was inevitably coming to this point. I honestly am really surprised that we didn't have this before in the nation's capital. I'm really shocked. Looking back, I sent a text just to have it on record. I sent a text to a good friend of mine last March, and I said, I'm putting this here as a marker. I do not believe we're going to have an election. So I'm actually shocked that we had an election because of everything that the president was stirring up. And then I'm really surprised that it was as secure as it was. But I'm surprised we didn't have more violence around Election Day, and that it took this long is really surprising. So anyway, this is the history of our nation. We have a violent history. We were born in violence. We were built on the violence directed towards Black bodies and stolen African people brought here and enslaved. I mean, this is our history. So I think that it's a kind of a naive white innocence that is really shocked by January 6th. And if we were genuinely truth-speaking Christian people, I think that I've been trying to think about things from this perspective. If Paul is traveling on mission, like say through Galatia, and people on the far edge of the empire are, if he had received word, or if people were talking about some violence that was done in Rome by one thug's armies against another thug. I mean, all these great generals in Roman history, they're all just like thugs with their own private armies. It's just such a thuggish kind of reality, ancient Rome. But if Paul hears about some violence done by one Roman general and his army against another Roman general, does that determine anything for a kingdom of God community far away in Galatia? So I've been trying to think from that perspective. As a member of a kingdom of God community here, which is about 60 people strong these days, at my church, does it really matter that there was violence done in the capital of a nation a couple hundred miles away, 700 miles away, that has a history of bloodshed from the very beginning? I mean, is that newsworthy? I don't know.
Sure felt that way, particularly when it was baptized with some Christian symbols and the announcement that Jesus saves and Jesus is Savior. How do we? So for Paul, I mean, the difference is that there wasn't any ichthus present.
Actually, hold on. That's like that's completely blasphemous, obviously. But isn't it just as blasphemous that we've had these kind of these marriage of symbols for generations of like, I mean, I taught at a Christian college formerly some years ago, where every year they would have a Veterans Day chapel and have like pictures of crosses with like, jets across them. And it was like this glorious marriage of like unleashing violence on the world at the same time as it's like a symbol of our faith. So it's like, I totally get it. I'm trying to look back peel back the layers of January 6th and just say, where should we have been shocked all along? If that was shocking, where should we have been shocked?
Right.
Because this is the culmination of something. It's not like a new, like a new thing.
This is not out of nowhere. Yeah,
totally.
And many of our black brothers and sisters have been just saying recently, "Hey, we told you."
Totally.
This. We've been talking about this.
Yeah, black people cannot afford to have illusions.
Right.
And they know who we are. They know our hypocrisies, and they know the character of our nation's history, and they know the hypocrisy of white Christianity.
So let's dig into your Rome analogy a little bit. The difference there is that there weren't Christians in Rome siding with one faction against another. So let's add that layer and then talk about Paul's response, right? Yeah. So does that matter to a Christian kingdom community 700 miles away? Seems like it does. What's Paul's word to the churches that are close and to the Christians that are involved?
Yeah. So thinking about, that's exactly right. So just that difference that you mentioned, I'd want to camp there for a while.
Yes.
So the difference is that Christians in, say, first century Galatia, like in Lystra, they see, or they should have seen, the biggest deal in the world is my inhabitation of a kingdom of God community that it looks weak and vulnerable, and we're just trying to make it through the day, make it through the week, just trying to figure out a way forward. And what's true about us is that we are enjoying God's blessing now through gathering, having a meal, and we are headed for the kingdom of God and his fullness in the future. And it does not matter if this general or that general is in power in Rome a couple hundred miles away. It does not matter. So what is thoroughly corrupted about contemporary Christian imaginations in America is that we imagine it matters everything that this or that political party is in power. And we see them on TV sort of owning the other party, or we watch them on Twitter owning the other party. So that's one thing that is radically messed up. That we imagine, I mean, nobody in the first century in the Roman Empire thought that Christian realities would come crashing down if Rome came crashing down, or that Christian realities would come crashing down if this general rather than that general was in power. But Americans have so associated America with Christianity that, you know, when America inevitably goes, you know, the way of the Ottoman Empire, basically on ashes of history, it's like we would be in crisis. And that is highly problematic, that we have not camped on and maximized our Christian identity and separated it and distinguished it from our American identity. And that has a lot to do with not being able to see the distinction between this party or that party not being able to see the reality that it's completely irrelevant which party's in power. The church still has its agenda. The church still has its political, socioeconomic agenda of blessing and hospitality. And
doesn't it matter? Because unlike Rome, we have input. So the counter to that is, well, if we can enact laws and work for laws that promote flourishing and justice, then of course that would matter. And isn't our very participation assumed as our civic duty, you know, blah, 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 blah. So I hear that, but I can also hear people say, well, yeah, but we can help save the lives of the unborn, or we get a say in how we treat immigrants. So of course it matters, either for the right or the left.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. We have a vote every 2 years, every 4 years about which party or which figures are going to sort of run the national system. That's for sure. But that should be, I don't know, to my mind, that's the least effective, or the least amount that my efforts affect my wider environment. And as a church, there's loads of political action that we can take as far as advocating for justice in our local situations. And that's the location of all of my political activity.
See that Tim, right there, that is so unappreciated and missed.
Oh, completely. I never thought about any of this. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have this understanding of being Christian that's privatized and personal and has nothing to do with contemporary life. But the church, in Paul's view, the church of Jesus Christ is a kingdom of God community that is its own political entity that has no loyalties to any party, no loyalties to any nation, and is loyal to the Lord Jesus Christ alone, and is given as a gift to every local situation, so that the church blesses, the church welcomes, the church looks out for the marginalized, has solidarity with those who suffer. And as far as my own tradition, we've not even taken the first step in imagining the kinds of political behaviors, postures, attitudes, actions, speech acts that we could be doing in our local situations to advocate for the oppressed, to look out for people that don't have a voice.
Right. So we've so narrowly defined being political to voting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So yes, I am Christian basically 30 minutes every 2 years, every 4 years.
Right.
And then, for a little while each Sunday where that doesn't really matter. But so America, I mean, if you really peel back the layers, America as a politic of violence has neutered the church and has shaped the way that the church can be political, and has identified and isolated it to only, 30 minutes every 2 years, every 4 years. We just don't know how to be political. We've not taken the time to flex that muscle of our imaginations. Right. But we've been owned.
Yeah. Right. So you can imagine the good that a 60-person kingdom outpost can do.
Yeah.
In much more importantly, on the abortion issue or on the immigration issue or what have you, as opposed to, blood, sweat, and tears over which party or which justice or which Congress will be in power.
Yeah, totally.
So let's push into this a little further. So that's some ways that maybe it's a little different today. But let's go back to Lystra and to Paul. And Paul is seeing that there are some Christians who've gotten involved in siding against one general against another. What's his response to this, do you think? I mean, do we get any glimpses of how he might respond to that in some of his writings? I mean, where I'm trying to go with this, Timothy, is what's the role of Christian leaders? What's the role of Christian communities? And what's the role of this cry that I'm hearing all of a sudden from Republicans and evangelicals for unity? That frustrates me to no end, and I'm trying to set you up for a sledgehammer. So I'm working slowly that direction.
Well, starting from the premise that the American Christian imagination is thoroughly corrupt, and we just haven't even begun to think well about so much of this. And also my assumption that I don't have any expectation of convincing anybody of anything. Really,
but we don't get to forsake that, do we? I hear you, and that'd be nice. Talk to you guys
about stuff, but I do not. Well, I guess I also understand. I think we have to have a really, really profound, thoroughgoing grasp of how pervasive and complete the present evil age and the powers that rule the present evil age have captured evangelical Christian imaginations. If they have a political, if they imagine that it's like say the Trumpist impulse. What I'm trying to get at is, I'm in the middle of reading Anne Applebaum's book right now, which I can never remember the title of, The Twilight of Democracy, the seductive allure, or is it the seductive lure of autocracy? And she talks a lot about how the impulse in crowds and in the populace that looks to a strong man and that is attracted to autocracy, it is not at the level, it's not intellectual, it's not at the level of ideas. You can't convince anybody. It's at the level of emotion, at the level of imagination. It's at the level of hatreds and resentments and suspicions and fears and nostalgia. It's this toxic brew that captures imaginations, and people are enslaved to a madness. It's a mania. It's not like an ideological position. So, I see figures like, Franklin Graham or, I don't know, evangelical leaders. I mean, what makes them a leader? They're just this popular figure. And I don't know.
Yeah.
But I see the crowds, evangelical crowds that flock to these kinds of figures and that have sort of a fanatical devotion to the current president. It's a symptom of an enslaved imagination, and it's not like. So anyway, I'm happy to talk with you guys about some of this stuff, and for people who have ears to hear, I hope that they hear. But I just don't have any hope of convincing anybody or turning anybody aside from the mania, because it's not like people are entertaining ideas. It's a manic condition that has everything to do with an enslaved imagination.
So what does Paul the pastor do? Let's say this infects his churches. I mean, what he doesn't. It seems to me he doesn't just sit back.
Yeah, well, right? He talks to his churches, that's for sure. So, I mean, if I were to think about how would you be a Pauline pastor today? What would you do?
Okay, now we're cooking.
It's like I I would only think about my congregation. I would not think about the mass of evangelicals. I think about my church and those people. Yep. And I think I would not want to have started like this week. This would be something that I would want to have seen the anger and the resentment and the fear and the suspicion for decades building toward now. So all of the dynamics that are up and running in people who have an addiction, say to like Fox News. I mean, Fox News and media outlets like that have been fomenting this for decades and have been actively capturing white Christian, mainly white conservative people's imaginations and sowing their imaginations with fear and anger and resentment. Toward immigrants, toward Muslims, towards Black people, and others. And I would have wanted to have been going to work on the imagination of my churches to talk about the fatality toward Christian faith of fear and resentment. Like fear and resentment in Scripture, like in James 3 and in the passage where Saul grows angry and jealous of David. I mean, fear and anger and resentment along that line open up to demonic enslavement. And Paul lists, like in his vice lists, he lists witchcraft and orgies and abusive speech. Like you're like, wait a minute, Paul, like abusive speech is just what I watch for 60 minutes every night on Fox News. That's no big deal. And abusive speech is what I hear from, pastors like John MacArthur, as I listen to all his sermons like that. That's no big deal. That's not as bad as witchcraft and orgies, is it? Well, for Paul, it is. Like toxic. Anger is toxic and resentment is toxic. And abusive speech is high-handed sin against what God is doing in generating and sustaining the unity of his people. So I think that I would have wanted to have been alarmed for years leading up to 2015 and 16 when this candidate and then subsequent president began whipping up the suspicions and fears and resentments of white evangelical people. I would have wanted to have seen that as like an absolute 5-alarm fire in 2015. So like, I don't know what to do about people that want to start today. Like, what do pastors do today with all this on their hands? It's like, man, this has been building for like,
but a lot of us, but it's like the race conversation. If I'm honest, I just wasn't aware until videos started showing up on the internet of Black people being abused by law enforcement.
Yep.
I had no awareness. I mean, that's part of privilege, right? Is I had no clue. And then I'm seeing it over and over, and it's gradually dawning on me, oh my Lord, this is an entirely different America that I have to come to grips with. Right? So there has to be grace for some it wasn't until 2017 or 2018 that they went, hold on a second, I'm seeing all these conspiracy theories. And then I'm hearing from some Christians, hey, this is part of the gospel fight. This is advancing the kingdom. I'm hearing from other Christians, don't talk politics. Why would you divide your church? And then I'm hearing from other Christians, man, you got to condemn this full-throated and Trump's the Antichrist. And I mean, so I have tremendous amount of grace for those of us who are here now going, well, what do we do? What do we do? I wish, I was opposed to the evangelical embrace of Trump from the get-go. But I was convinced no one would take him seriously. That was my mistake. I figured everyone just saw him as a buffoon, and no one would take that seriously. So totally wrong about that. But I think there are people waking up to seeing this huge split in their church, and they're asking, well, what do I do now? So
what do you do?
That's Pauline scholar. Let's go.
Like I said, it's
do you just walk away?
Well, it depends on who you're talking about. Like, I'm just an average Christian. I mean, I'm not a pastor. I'm just an average churchgoer. So I just get to go to church and love all the people that are there. But if I was a pastor, I think I would be wanting to talk a lot about what loyalty to Christ looks like and how that's not the same as loyalty to any kind of a movement. I think I'd want to start talking about the toxicity and the fatality to Christian faith of anger and resentment, of abusive speech. I'd want to talk about the virtues of listening and about the importance of unity. I mean, it's always a good time to start. Like you were saying, Mike, I mean, you got to start from somewhere.
But if these aren't intellectual arguments, then what good is preaching?
Yeah, well, this is what I'm saying. In preaching, I'd want to talk about all these things and want to be pointing out the sources of, I mean, if I were to start this week, if I was a pastor starting this week, like, what do I do?
Yeah.
I'd want to start talking about what Paul envisions as kingdom of God virtues in community, and about cultivating postures of welcome toward outsiders. So that means we've got to look at outsiders, people that are unlike us, as the people that we are blessed to welcome and serve and love. And then wanting to I'd take some time. I'd take a couple of weeks and talk about that from a couple different passages, and talk about what are the messages and what are the assumptions that lie in our own hearts and in our own minds that would keep us from being hospitable. Why do we look at immigrants as dangerous? And then think about the character of our Christian identities as people that have given up our possessions and our standing in this world, knowing that we are going to inherit everything in the world to come. And what are the sources of our fear? Are we afraid that we're going to lose our stuff? And why are we attached to our stuff? And what do we not understand the character of our Christian identity as a people that are dead to this present evil age and alive to the age to come? I would want to talk about all of that all the time and start drawing the connections. The problem is, I think that for many pastors, they would have to start learning the connections, because we've not run the implications out in our own minds and hearts. And but it's always time to start. I mean, this is what I'd want to start doing in my local congregation.
And what if you were accused of being divisive because you were preaching these things?
Yeah, that probably would happen. I don't I mean, this is this is something that I've been doing for the last 20 years, as I've been talking about these things in classrooms and routinely going back to the biblical text to show where I'm talking about this from the Bible. Like Jesus in Hebrews exhorts, the writer of Hebrews exhorts his audience to practice hospitality, which is philoxenia, love of the stranger, xenia, which is the same root word for xenophobia, so strong men stir up xenophobia, fear of the stranger, fear of the foreigner. And I'd want to talk about the subject matter over which Jesus will judge us when we arrive at the throne from Matthew 25, about welcoming the foreigner and visiting people in jail, and just talk about Christian identity as all these things. And if I were a pastor accused of division, I guess I'd want to know. What's the basis of that. What are you talking about? At the same time, this is why I've said in a number of places, the structure of church life in America has been hardwired for us to never talk about this.
Yeah.
And if I am only recently coming to see that this is necessary for us to talk about, I mean, very honestly, I've just not said anything online.
I know.
For a couple of weeks, because I've just thought, well, it's over. The time when the 5-alarm fire was in 2015. And if we didn't see it then, what are you going to do now? I mean, right now, if I were to start when everything is at the absolute boil, and not only that, But this is the start. I mean, what we saw January 6th is the beginning. This is going to be an era that will be with us for a while, of violence, and this is not over. But if I were just to be awakened right now, I think I'd want to start, I don't know, lamenting or confessing sin, or having prayer services, praying for wisdom and guidance. I'd want to start reading and gathering resources on the character of white Christian nationalism and the character of autocracy. I think dark days are coming for us, and but yeah. So, like I said, January 6th was, if January 6th is the start of feeling alarmed, I think that we're in real trouble. Like, we're in real trouble.
What do you think about that, Stafford?
I do think we're in trouble. I don't know. I think nostalgia is a hell of a drug, and so much of this hatred and violence has been rooted in that, which I think is really fascinating. Like making America great again, and you know, this again thing, and you hear that rhetoric. You hear it from the people in the videos that were at the little, you know, riot at the Capitol, but you hear it from the people in the church too, trying to get back to something. And like when you say stealing imaginations, I almost feel like it's not even like stealing them. They're just, imagination has been like force fed. It's like, I don't know that people have an imagination in this context of this conversation. I don't know if it's been misled or if it's just been like lobotomized and then replaced with something else. That's what I'm afraid of, is that, you know what I mean? It's like it's a complete failure of imagination. It's a lack of imagination to have landed on this president. This is the one that you're going to double down on. This is the one that you're going to go to war for. This guy. That's a complete failure of imagination. I've been listening to, U2 this last week over and over.
Just listen.
When I look at the world,
sucking up.
No, well, I was gonna text it to you, but then I was like, I'm sure you have thought of, because it's a common phrase, like, Jesus, I want to see what you see. So I've been listening to that song over and over again. It's like, and that idea, I want to see what you see when you look at the world. That's what I want. I want to see. I have a failure of imagination, and I have a pretty decent imagination, and mine's failing because I can be just as guilty of having my imagination constructed by somebody else, and from, you know, if it's a leftist thing, it can be the same thing for me. I need to understand what Jesus sees in this world. And I need to see and understand. I need to see with new eyes, with his eyes, and understand exactly how he sees all of this, and how he sees his children, and how he sees this tragedy, you know? And I don't know. It's a weird time period. People are hurt and struggling.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, this is, yeah. Tim Gombis. So there is a mania, it seems, attached to conspiracy theories, and how does Paul's thinking of unity in the church apply, do you think, in situations like these? So, because I've heard that call, well, we needed to move beyond this and be unified. We need to heal. We need to, whatever. And I see Christians who have taken me and others to task, who've spoken about this, just about, you're just adding to the division. So when Paul's calling to unity, when Paul's calling his church to unity, what does that mean? Where are the limits to that?
Well, it's absolutes. I mean, there's no limits to it. But to my mind, being Christian involves unstintingly, unafraid, leaning into the truth of what's real. So the church, I think the church should be involved primarily. As like you, Mike, I feel like I've just gotten a recent education, and I feel like I'm taking baby steps and learning about our racialized history. I think the church has to take the lead in confessing our national sins and confessing the truth about our nation's history. Like, we've never been willing to tell the truth about our character as a people, as a nation. And that's what the church does. We speak the truth. And so with the events, over the last really 50 years, ever since 1970, this has been building in the backlash to the 60s, sort of in like white middle class, respectable, roiling rage at developments and rights for Black and brown people and sexual revolution, all that kind of stuff. This has been building since 1970. I think it's the church's task to be very attentive to this moment and refuse to rush past it. Our national sins have come into full view, and we should be fully prepared to listen and to talk about them and confess them and to own the realities of who we are. Knowing that we are, and that's not self-flagellation. We're already a loved people. We're already loved by God. We're already welcomed into his family. We're already guaranteed an inheritance in the future of all things. And we've already died to this world, so we have nothing to defend. So we can be open to self-examination. And I think it's not a Christian posture whatsoever to just like say, well, we don't want to. That's 1 John. If we deny our sins, the truth is not in us. Like, let's listen. Let's be open to examination. What has happened? What was done? So yeah, impulses to kind of paper over things are really unfortunate. I understand what people are saying. I don't know about writing things online. I've tried to identify and speak plainly about things like on media, social media, but I've tried to adopt a posture of confession as I do that. Like, these are realities, ideologically enslaving dynamics that have practical outcomes, and I'm writing about them because I'm caught in them, and without accusing people or calling people out. At the same time, I think the appropriate Christian posture is to name and identify people that have set themselves up as leaders or spokespeople or people that ought to be listened to, like politicians. They put themselves in places where they know they're going to be criticized. And I think the church should play a prophetic role of calling out bad behavior and ways that their decisions are fostering the oppression of people that are marginalized. And I think that it's Christian people have every right and every responsibility to call out Christian quote unquote leaders, which again, that's such as an evangelical person, like that, we don't have a church hierarchy. So, there's no such thing as leaders in our churches. That these are just people that have big platforms. But if they purport to speak for God, I think they open themselves up to critique and criticism. So I think it's worth naming all these realities for what they are. And I don't think that is divisive, but at the same time, there's so much noise right now.
Right.
What always frightens me is when I see something dangerous and no one's talking about it. A time like right now, when everyone freaks out and is saying all kinds of stuff, that's the time where I prefer to be quiet, because everybody's saying too much stuff, and it's usually cacophonous and stupid. Because it's not what I mean by
see that
stupid.
You've listened to our last podcast. Yes.
Oh no, I haven't. But what I mean is, if you think that this is a moment of alarm, then you probably don't have the cultivated imagination and the deep well of knowledge and awareness to speak to it coherently. Like with the outbreak of racial violence, I remember there were calls for pastors to say stuff about this in their churches. And I wrote something like, I don't think that that's the case, because I think that if pastors, like just this week, I realized we have a race problem in our country. It's like, well, you're probably going to say something dumb about it if you just start talking about it this week. You know what I mean? You'll probably be working from like a warm sense of like white sentimentality and not really be prepared to speak from a profound Christian awareness about what's actually going on. So the thing is, if we're not, I mean, I'm not saying we should all just shut up, but if we actually opt for silence, there are postures available for being Christian, like lamenting, confessing sin, or even times of prayer for insight and wisdom. And, this is still a good week for political action, for intense political action, of going down to your local soup kitchen and say that you could work a shift, or like volunteering to like take over a shift at a homeless shelter. That's powerful political action in the local polis. But, I don't think that people, like, what are you going to do about January 6th right now or this week? What are you going to do about it? I don't know what I can do about it. I know that I'm not going to get on a bus and go to Washington dressed like a Viking. But aside from that, I don't know what I can positively do. But I know that I can write a letter to someone who's incarcerated. I know that I can, make a donation to my local charity that's helping homeless people get into sustainable housing. I can do that. I've got friends and relatives who, have fallen victim to conspiracy theories. I can pray for them and give them a call and see how they're doing, ask them how they're doing, but I will not enter into any discussion about that topic, because like I said, it's a mania. It's an enslavement. It's not like an idea that we can debate. It doesn't work at the ideational level. It works at the emotional, visceral, gut felt level. But I don't know.
Yeah.
And I can have joy, and I can get some, have carnitas burritos tonight. And I guess I'm just trying to portray a scenario. I'm not trying to make this unserious. I'm trying to say the serious moment, we have to look back and see that the serious moment was the moment that another group that I don't belong to, like immigrants, was demonized. And I thought that was no big deal. Yeah. And I thought, you know what I mean? Like, that was the time when Christians should have stood up and said, no. Immigrants, and our delightful duty, our duty of delight to welcome them and offer them hospitality as honored guests, that's under threat by this political candidate. That's like, if I did not as a pastor stand up in a pulpit that week and say, we are under threat, if any of you see this as something hopeful and promising, that's a 5-alarm fire. If I didn't see it then I don't have the cultivated imagination to start talking about anything now. I'll probably say something stupid like, the temple of democracy was desecrated, which is complete paganism. Like, that's Christian nationalism. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because the temple of democracy is a temple to a pagan deity.
All right, Stafford, anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that when the capitalism conversation was similar. I mean, there's obviously similar threads that run through all this stuff. The idea of, I do think it's so important that pastors, if they have been having this conversation or are trying to continue to have it, I think the mania is true. And it's like, watching it, it felt like WrestleMania, like the dude in the bison hat was like, this is people wearing capes and Christian flag capes and Donald Trump capes, and it was like a WrestleMania event. There was as somebody who has watched wrestling their entire life, I was like, wow. But this idea where it's hard for people to hear in the middle of mania and in the middle of the alarm, the 5 alarm and that kind of stuff. But the pastors who continue if they've felt the conviction of this, to continue that conversation out of the flames and out of the mania, to keep having that conversation with their congregations and with their people and their communities. Because I keep seeing people argue about like saving the term evangelical, like this is what it means and it doesn't mean what it's become and we need to take it back. Then the name itself means nothing to me, and I don't know that there's a lot of, how do we save the church? I don't know that we can save the church, but I do like the idea of that the church is the group of people that I worship with here, and then our community around us, and how, and if a lot of pastors started to take that approach, right, as they're kind of breaking away or learning how to reinvest, if they're just like, this is about my community, those who are marginalized in my community, and if all little pastors start to do that all over the place, I don't know that we can ever win the battle, the evangelical battle, but I don't know that we're even supposed to be fighting that battle anymore. Like, it feels like a lost cause to try to reclaim all of that nonsense, the nostalgia bomb, the Franklin Graham part of the world. But if all these little pastors are really investing and trying to make a difference in their communities, I don't know. I got hope in that. I think there's something cool in there, and I don't know. But
yeah, just thinking about, what'd you say, WrestleMania, dude? What year was that? It was like 84 or 85 when
The
King
first
Kong
one?
Bundy and Andre the Giant went up against Hulk Hogan, and who else was it?
Probably.
I was like, I don't know how many times I watched
Macho
that,
Man?
man.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think if I were a pastor, I would want to be thinking about just the fundamentals of being Christian.
Yeah.
Like, we love one another, lay down our lives for one another. We love our neighbors as ourselves. We love our enemies and pray for them. And just even like pondering that and pressing it over weeks and thinking about where in our collective imagination of our social body, of just this church, do we have resentments against anybody? Do we actually have enemies that we're struggling to love? Are they Republicans? Are they Democrats? Are they Muslims? Are they, who are they? That's where we have our community work. That's where we have our work to do, to go at our own resentments, our own hatreds, our own failures to love, our own, like, what is it about our imagination that I see Democrats as the enemy? What is it about our imagination I see Republicans as the enemy? Why don't I see them as my neighbor that I'm so blessed to just get to know and to love and to serve and to listen to? And like, why don't I see it as hopeful that I could grieve with those who grieve, even if they're of a different political party? And why don't I see it as hopeful that I could rejoice with those who rejoice, even if they are different, even if they don't have like, citizen status? I mean, so I think I'd want to just camp on Christian identity and then ask, what are the roadblocks? Why do we see people who watch a different news channel as the problem? That's a problem for us. That's a challenge that we have to go to work on. And all of the stuff that we say in response to those kind of questions, like, will they support, those are our idols talking, and we need to go to work on those. Because I see it. I've been trained to see it as hopeful that we would have all conservatives on the bench, or I've been trained to see it as hopeful to have all liberals on the bench. Like, why do I have hope in this nation? Why do I have hope in this country? Why is my hope not in the kingdom of God and in the coming of the Son of Man, who is going to just make all countries and all Supreme Courts irrelevant forever? Why is that not my hope? What is preventing me from having my hope there? And what's Jesus going to think on the day when I face him? And he asked me, why was I not welcoming foreigners? Why was I not visiting prisoners? Why was I resentful why was I not loving my neighbor? Will he care if I tell him, well, he was a Democrat or my neighbor was a Republican? That's why I didn't obey you for my life, my whole life, because you know how my neighbor is. He had that one candidate sign in his yard. Is Jesus going to say, well, all right, I'll give you a pass, you didn't have to obey me because your neighbor is sort of a difficult to love person. It's not going to fly. So it's like, we've got to be cultivating communities of that kind of warm-hearted love, and see the challenge as going to work on ourselves and not our neighbors. I can't do anything about my neighbor.
Yeah.
But I can love him. I can hear his life story. I can shovel his driveway, I can whatever.
Yeah.
So it's basically getting back to just fundamental Christian identity and not letting all the other noise and stuff, gaining the courage to not let all the other stuff in our culture hijack what it means to be Christian.
Totally.
That's such a good word, dude. Well,
that's
my friend,
I'm not saying that's not a challenge.
Oh no, I think it's easy. There's a couple of books out there that give us 3 easy steps. No problem.
Yeah. Go through the whole U2 discography.
There it is, Mike.
And you'll be healed.
Yes. And then to protect yourself against the 7 demons that may come back, Pearl Jam. That just that's the capper.
Yeah. Good chaser.
Anyway, Tim, man, thanks for being such a great friend and a good conversation partner.
Man, I was glad to talk with you guys.
No, you always challenge our thoughts. So we're very grateful that you're so generous with your time, man. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. Always love hanging out.
And if you want more Gombis, let me encourage you to check out Faith Improvised, wherever you get your podcasts. It is unfiltered, very Markan Gombis. He's been doing a series on the Book of Mark, but really, really good stuff. He's got a book coming out that we're going to talk about on the show, hopefully, in February. It's called Power and Weakness, Paul's Transformed Vision for Ministry. I had the privilege of reading an early version of this, and I'm not saying it just because Tim's here, but literally one of the best books on ministry as a cruciform service to the body as opposed to a platform building exercise I've ever read. I mean, I would really encourage you. In fact, we may try to snag some copies and give it away. But anyway, that I would want you, if you're in any way attached to Jesus following or vocational ministry or both, I'd want you to check that out. And then he also has a blog. Those are still real in the world, called Faith Improvised. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Anything else you want me to throw out there, Tim?
Not me. I think that's cool. No, thanks for hanging out.
Absolutely. Stafford, last words?
Nope.
Yeah, so that was a subdued Tim Gombis. And I love it. I love that someone that smart is just willing to sit and like, I don't know. I'm working this out. I'm verbally processing. Yeah. I don't know. I love that.
We need to get these videos. We need to start putting these up as videos so that people can see, because everything you just said, the way you just described him, there's a complete physical embodiment of exactly that's happening in real time the whole time too, that I feel like people are missing out on, like his actual physical processing of information is.
Yeah, he leans back, he takes his hat off, he squints his eyes. And it's like, yeah, he's
burning calories in thought.
He does a 10-mile walk at 4:45 in the morning is what he told us.
That's wild.
We weren't originally planning on doing an outro to this, but as is Mr. Stafford's wont, he began to say some things in response to the interview we just heard that I was like, oh, well, I think we should talk about this. So kind of pick up, Tim, just what you were telling me, like literally 30 seconds ago.
Yeah, conversations like that and everything that's happened over the last 2 weeks, and obviously multiple times over my lifetime, I think that a conversation like that always makes me think about hope and how to reconcile hope or reconcile the things that we're seeing through that. So what I mean by that is looking at what what feels like a crisis in the church. Obviously, it was a crisis in the nation, but just from the church perspective, what do we have hope in? Because people seem to be either most people just kind of seem to be hopeless, actually. I don't see a lot of hopeful people. And if they are hopeful, often it seems in a magical way.
Yes.
Like God will deliver, all that kind of stuff. And so I don't put a lot of stock in that, but I don't want to put stock in the hopelessness. And the example that I gave Mike off Mike, that'd be a good name for a show for you, was how growing up, people would always talk about our time here on earth as the only hell you'll ever know. And I can't wait to get to heaven, and this is terrible, and people are terrible, and blah, blah, blah. And I just remember my response was always just like, man, God made all this, and he was like, this is pretty good. This is cool. And he was invested in this life of humanity. And I've just always kind of wanted to pursue joy. That may not come through in my tone all the time, but I've always wanted to pursue joy. And I think there's something to our time here. I think it's worth something. I think it's kind of great.
Why were you thinking of joy? Why were you thinking of joy, though, or hope? Excuse me, in response to what we just heard.
I just when Gombis is kind of picking apart, like maybe it was, I don't know if it was in response to where if you can start having the conversation now or not. I agree with him that the 2015 or before, when all this rhetoric began, we should have collectively just been like, whoa, 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 whoa. Instead, so much of the church latched onto it for many reasons, but it's fascinating. But I do have hope that the church can learn something and can reinvest or reinvigorate, or not even, those are terrible words, find a new way forward. And we're really good, Americans and Christians are also really good at trying to make big declarations when we're in the middle of the flames. Like, holy moly, everything's going crazy, now's the time. And then when the flames die down a little bit, just forgetting about it and waiting for the next fire to make a big statement. The things he was talking about training, not training, but really investing and speaking into your congregation about these conversations should be ongoing. We've heard that from a lot of our Black brothers and sisters that are pastors and stuff, that's like, you need to keep having these conversations. We have been having these conversations. Y'all need to keep having these conversations going forward. We need to listen to that and continue to have these conversations. But I have hope in that conversation. So I think hope is an interesting thing for us to talk about in the wake of all of this carnage. I don't know. This is all real-time thoughts, so that may have been jumbled, but
well, first of all, I really Mike, off mic, on mic would be the better title.
Yeah.
Secondly, yes, this world is not my home. This world sucks. Can't wait to escape this place. Man, that has its roots deep in some false teaching, and contributes to some degree when we don't understand our relationship to the wider world and culture.
Yeah.
Then we're either escaping or we're trying to take it over. And neither of those is an option for Jesus people. Neither one of those. My third thought is, as I was listening to you, I was thinking I am incredibly hopeful. Like I find myself so invigorated by what's happening in the world. Now, some of that is anger, and anger is incredible fuel, right? We can, when we're angry, tiredness goes away, but for me, I'm more of a like flash in the pan kind of anger person, right? I get mad, I get over it quick. I don't hang on usually to stuff. This is a more settled, energetic, like opposition.
Yeah, totally.
But it's like we talked about at the end of the year about the church. It's like, here's what I can liken it to. So last year for me was incredibly transformational because I was finally willing to hear the truth about myself in ways that were very painful, but took exposing to get to. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, the story's told other places. But I became, hearing the truth became something that went from being scary to being liberating. And I don't know how or when, but it did. Hearing the truth about me in my character fractures and flaws and sins and patterns became something that became very liberating. And it was like, oh, I had no idea. I had no idea that was all connected. Didn't excuse a darn thing, not even remotely. But that posture of seeking the truth about me, it unlocked a lot of growth. And some of that was shame. Like, no wonder I've always pretended to not be this because I am this. But more of what was unlocked was liberation and the seeing of patterns. A similar thing is happening to our church for those who are willing to hear the truth about us. And I find that in the same way I used to feel defensive, I find that incredibly liberating to see, no, this really is us. Like, and when Tim talks about, hey, these sacred political practices of hospitality and enemy love and lament, and prayer for those who persecute us, like, Lord, that is the most political stuff we can be doing. And it is the most subversive, radical stuff. And I'm like, I'm all in for it.
And I said in there too, some point, like, I am, I guess, kind of hopeless, and not in the generalized sense, or maybe in a generalized sense, about much of the church. I see a lot of hearts and voices that are so hard. I don't know, but I also don't know that it's my place to try to crack that egg.
Yeah.
But I do see, I don't know that the church has ever fully realized its, what you just said in talking about Gombis, like the loving of neighbor and the investment in the community and that kind of stuff. I don't think the church has ever fully realized its true mission and calling.
No, that's always been social justice, or like, what do we call it? Servant evangelism. It wasn't just being Christian. We haven't even gotten
there yet.
It wasn't being Christian.
That gives me hope.
Right.
It gives me hope because it's not like we did it and we found it to be empty or unfruitful or we failed at it. I just don't think we've even gotten there yet. So it's like we're still on this what I think is a positive journey of becoming more Christ-like in pursuing just those simple things. Like the Matthew 25 stuff is just, that verse has haunted me for like 2 years. And I was on another podcast. It kept coming up at the beginning of this year, like 3 or 4 times in a row in conversations with people in different contexts, unprovoked. And I was like, all right, I don't know how God speaks, but this verse has been slapping me in the face over and over again. I'm going to try to listen a little bit to see but it's like, if the church focused on that and we did it, which we haven't all the way. So I have hope in that. I have hope that the church can get to the point of to becoming the bride that we were intended to be. Yeah. And I don't think that we have. And that gives me a lot of hope.
Yes.
But I don't have a lot of hope in I just don't care about reclaiming names or reclaiming platforms or reclaiming anything. I really just want to do what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And try to inspire the people around me to do the same and to do that for those people and to serve the people in my community and then the community around us. And I really think that's transformational. If pastors and Christians started to do that everywhere, I think there'd be massive ripple effects.
Yeah.
Just like massive ripple effects. Instead of fighting for or voting for ding-dong Kavanaughs into judiciary seats. Yeah. If we focused on things like loving young, unwed, single, pregnant women who are short on options, giving them a family around them if they don't have it. I don't know, tangible things like that. I have a lot of hope in that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. The gift the gift that we've been given is utter clarity. Like you can't, I mean, you now have to willfully turn away.
Yes.
We are now, it feels like, and maybe I'm overstating this, but it feels like we are without excuse if we're not honest about the failure of discipleship and political imagination in the church in America. And so
your example is totally right on with that. Your journey, like you have that moment where you can choose to look away, or you choose to go through the scary part. And I think we're all there. I think we're all there all the time with this and with everything else in our lives. You're constantly choosing your posture.
Yeah.
But I think that we together can do this.
Well, and if I could extend that parallel for just a second without, making this about me at all, but I see parallels so clearly. Like, for me, I realized that competence in my chosen pastoral profession was a way to hide shame and to soothe shame and to cover shame. And you take away that competence and you're left with just the shame. And, and for years, the competence of evangelicalism. Look at how big our churches are. Look at how, influential our politics are. Look at how much cultural weight we carry. Look at our rock stars and our artists and our athletes. You know what I mean? Like there was just this sense of we could hide our shame behind our competency.
The most sought after voted block. That's a lot of power, misplaced power.
Yeah, and how big's the Christian market, in terms of just spending dollars, and you realize, so that we were just using that to cover our shame. You know what I mean? And all of these red herrings that are being thrown out now about CRT and homosexuality and women pastors by the people that have enabled racism and covered sexual abuse, you just realize, okay, the gift to me is clarity about myself. And this really is the journey of all of us, right? We can't go prophetically screwing around in the world, calling stuff out in Jesus' name, unless the logs in our own eyes are at the forefront of our vision.
Totally.
Right? And
it's
so
empty.
It is totally empty. And so for me, what the source of hope, not only because I've seen Jesus of Nazareth be real, like when the chips are down and it's crappy and there's nowhere else to turn, I've seen him. I've just seen it and in unexplainable ways. But he loves his bride too damn much.
Yeah.
To let this, if he was willing to deconstruct the religion his father founded, right? Are we surprised that he would firmly, yet out of kindness, show the light of truth into all of these dark recesses we've hid behind our competence?
Yeah.
And for those of us who, we really are presented with a choice. Do we look and say, yep, that is us, and that is me?
Yep.
And then repent and grow, or do we just continue to look away? So I like that, Timothy. I'm glad you brought that up. Because I do feel an urgency I didn't feel on January 5th. And I don't know if that's bad or not. I feel a different kind of clarity. So I don't know. And I feel like there are loads of pastors who are in this situation of, I don't have time to read books on the history of evangelicalism. I'm just dealing with the people in my church, and it's here now, and I'm still a pastor. And so what do I do?
Yeah.
So lots of grace for those of us in that space too.
Yes.
Any last thoughts, my friend?
No, those were my last thoughts.
That's how. So we pressed end recording, and then Tim starts riffing on this, and I'm like, dude, Come on. This is so good. So good. So anyway, friends, thanks for listening. We really, and I say this a lot, but we're really grateful for you. And we're really grateful that you trust us with your time and your attention. So thanks for that. Till next time, my friends, we'll talk after the inauguration, hopefully. And hopefully all will be well.
Oh. Thank you for listening to this conversation. The Vox Podcast is a 501c3 nonprofit organization that is supported by listeners like yourself. If you'd like to partner with us, you can do so at patreon.com/Vox Podcast. You can also engage with the hosts on social media at facebook.com/Vox Podcast, on Instagram at Vox Podcast, and on Twitter at Mike Erie. Thank you for walking this road with us.